Okay, we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion now. This will be a big benefit for those of you that are joining us on the live stream. What I'm going to do is I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to go with first, if that's all right with everyone here. We're also joined by Nigel. Thank you very much. So we have our speakers here from this morning, Colin, Maurice, Ian, Levi, and as I mentioned, Nigel as well. So some really good industry professionals with a ton of experience, as you can see from their presentation. So if I can just kick off with the first question, if I may. And this is mainly to Ian and Maurice, the first presentation that we had this morning. You talked a lot about the procedures that you'd put in place, the strategies. My question is how have you measured the success of those particular strategies?
Yeah, look, that's actually, as we all know, that's actually very difficult to measure success of things because things are so fluid and projects move on. I suppose how we measured our success is around ensuring that the quality, how we've driven quality in our projects has completely changed when we looked at a project from maybe 5 years ago versus what we've done now when our processes have changed. What we've delivered to a site is completely different. The quality aspect of it has completely changed. And that for us is so important, where our designs are coordinated correctly, the actual issues are all closed, the clashes are all closed, and then the site team goes and actually installs on the site, and there's very few RFIs then that come back to the design team. And that for me has been an immeasurable change in how we deliver it. And the one other thing I just have to say is one of our clients last year said to the folks in my team who delivered the design that the design they received from Jacobs was easily the best design they've ever got from Jacobs, and it came down to the processes we had in place and as well as that, the team that we had. So that for me was just the icing on the cake.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just to add to this, probably the internal view of the organization, 3 aspects. So one is, as we already mentioned, time needed for a setup and to adopt the setup to a new project. And then 2 other, but even more necessary aspects to encounter, and that's user activity, people actively using the system, and then user demand, people asking for it. If they're in a project in a widespread organization which is fast moving and they ask for the setup they know because they see value in it.
Fantastic. Okay, next question from me for Colin. Your presentation was incredibly interesting based on the amount of depth that you went into, which it's rare in sort of short period of time to be able to cover as much information as you did. But my question for you is that how is the implementation of some of the procedures and the strategies that you were talking about, how has that fundamentally changed the way you work now?
Well, I mean, there's a number of different ways. First and foremost, I guess, because we have almost a template and a framework for system use, and we have defined what the minimum expectation, or we call it the MVP, the minimum viable product. We've defined that for every one of the tools that we use. That's actually then set the benchmark for, are we doing it or are we not? So it becomes, similar question I asked these guys around measurability. That's a measurability of success, is that tools are in use and being used the right way. And then the data that comes out the back of those is being collected consistently and it's governed data. I think that's a really important point. I guess it's one of those where I sort of push it back to the great team that we have. I'm very fortunate that I sit across 3 quite individual yet very well conjoined teams in digital construction, information management, and business systems. Across those 3 teams, there's around 80 people. So there's a lot of people who have a lot of experience. They bring a lot of value, but they bring a lot of enthusiasm and energy. And I think that, I talked about it a little bit in my presentation, but everybody undervalues the people element. And actually with all of those people going into projects or sitting in meetings or presenting to SLTs, that generates the kind of hubbub that you need that makes change. And I think without that, we'd probably still be a little bit pushing uphill. You know, the old silhouetted image of the guy pushing the block, that would be us. But I think actually we've got to the tipping point now where it's not necessarily a free roll, but certainly we're on a downward hill to just unilateral adoption of what we're doing and acceptance. You know, that we probably don't place enough emphasis on acceptance. People accept the tools because we can show a site manager how Procore helps him with quality. We can show a design manager how Revisto helps him understand issues that he has in pre-construction. All of those things, bringing them to the fore. You know, Levi alluded to having something on site where you can have a real live transient piece of information that gets you from a question to an answer to a mitigation really quickly. That for us is massive, and because we have it, the art of the possible is becoming actually just the reality, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you for that. Moving on, I suppose to my final question is, I mean, I've been involved in this industry for a relatively short amount of time, in comparison to quite a lot of the others that are here, but I feel like we're finally at the stage now where we're seeing what I would consider a change movement in digital transformation. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. There's been various standards, various strategies in place, but it really feels like now we are getting to the point of momentum. My question is what do you think are going to be the key pieces of technology development over the next couple of years that you've got your eye on now, that you think is going to really make a big change to the way you work, to the way that projects are delivered over the next couple of years? So not 5 to 10 years, sort of the more short term, and that's to anybody on the panel. So whoever wants to pick up the mic and answer that.
Does anybody else want to start, or I start? Do you guys want to start because you haven't spoken yet? Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I don't think it's the technology that's coming that we've got our eye on. It's the technology that's already there, which is going to make the big difference in the next, 6 months, 16 months, 16 years. No, probably not. I think it's that technology. You're right. We've reached that tipping point. Colin said it just then. Pushing the rock up the hill. We've reached that point where it's now becoming the norm. And we're not talking about cutting edge. We're not talking about bleeding edge anymore. We're talking about norm, where we're seeing it's not just the Kias of the world. It's the ABC architects, 10 people outfits who are now utilizing the technology to help their work as they go along. So I think that's the key one. Yes, we could talk about things like, the Building Smart Developments, IDS, and those kind of things that are coming out. Honestly, I don't think we'll see that as a direct take-up until it's implemented in software. So software cycles, we're talking 6, 12 months before we get that. Now it's the standard, it's the processes, the tools, Revisto, that's already there, that people are starting to use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And I think to add to that, I think in Colin said earlier, simple is sexy. I think we have a lot of the tools available now, and it's almost we need to get better at the democratization of information. So we have all these tools available. It's being able to get that into the right people's hands in the quickest way possible, and also slimming down the stack. So you almost end up with, if you take the mobile phone, for instance, as a concept, back in the day, you would have to carry a camera and a mobile phone and a GPS device and so on and so forth. And I think as we're getting to that stage now, my background, I used to do deviation analysis, as built to design, that kind of thing. LiDAR was a huge part of that, and LiDAR is a huge part in the construction industry. And we're slowly starting to see that kind of technology being democratized, coming down in price, being more accessible to people. And I can see that it's already here, but playing a bigger part in that transfer of information amongst project and site teams.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to go with this one now. I suppose, going by what sort of Nigel and Levy were kind of saying there, right? So if you look at it, there's two problems that we have. One is, I think the industry is very saturated with technology, right? So there's a huge saturation in construction industry with technology. On the flip side, you have Gartner studies that say we are the least digital, or one of the least digital industries out of all of the industries globally. It doesn't add up, right? We have so many tools and so many digital capabilities being offered in construction, but yet we're being told we're the least, or one of the least of them all. You look like the automotive manufacturing industries are way, way ahead of us. I think that like it's hard to solve that in a couple of years, but I suppose that's the journey that at least our group and our teams in Jacobs are on is, and taking some of what Colin said around paperless construction. I mean, that is probably one of the single biggest problems in construction is the amount of use of paper and the wastage of paper and the use of 2D drawings on site, printed out to go and actually build things on site. I mean, the sooner we move away from that and actually use the models and the content to set out our works on site properly, to install them properly and deliver it properly, once we start to head there, that's when I think the digital enablement side of it, our industry will see Gartner and that scale on that graph a bit. For me, I think it's 2 years is too short of a time to solve a problem like this. I mean, I can talk to you very technically around some of the things we're looking at around machine learning and automated design, and those processes quickly generate layouts of very complex buildings to quickly get approval and agreements with clients, to quickly go to planning, to quickly then go and build it on site. But like that's like a whole different kettle of fish compared to the fact that we're being told our industry is one of the least digital industries in the globe, but yet we have so many software platforms, so many different ways and vendors of telling us how to do things. I'd like to hear what other people think on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you made some good points, Ian, particularly around this idea that construction is so far behind, because we get it all the time, and you know, I keep saying I'm going to sound like a broken record soon, but it's that acceptance, that cultural piece, isn't it? We've got all the toys, we've got all the Lego bricks, we just seemingly can't quite put them together in a way that makes sense. Just a couple of other thoughts for me. I think I absolutely agree on this idea of better utilization of the tools that we have. We know what we've got, we know what we want to do. I guess I'd go back to what I said around if you have a Revisto, which is a 9 out of 10, you need to do a bit of a deeper dive and say, where are you as a business? Are you a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever? And then you've got to measure and you've got to, put down on paper how you're going to get from one and close that delta to get from one number to the other. And that can only be done by execution, by implementation, by essentially putting it into a project and seeing what the outcomes are and then learning from it and being better and working with vendors. I think, we challenged, we had a really good enterprise conversation with Revisto a couple of weeks ago where it was, tell us what's on your roadmap, because that helps us strategize where we can get to, not where we want to be, but where we can get to, because they are two very different things. The North Star is not where you will get to. The North Star is the bit that you always want to target, but you know that you'll always fall a little bit short of that, and that's fine. You were saying you're happy Revisto being a 9 out of 10. I would happy with us delivering all of our tools 7 out of 10. That would make us one hell of a machine, but we're probably not there. I think sorry, I'll pass over to you in a second, Moritz. But I think that the one thing for me that is a massive opportunity, or maybe the two things. One of those is integrations between tools, better integrations, better lifting and shifting of information and visibility of one event, one circumstance in one solution that actually influences and impacts a decision that might be made in another. That's massive. That needs to get better, but that's not a new technology. That's a better process, and that probably falls into some of the machine learning. And we're doing the same sort of thing around AI. How do you harness information from points A, B, C, and D, and what does that give you if you put them together? The other thing is the thing that nobody wants to say, but it's digital twins and the ability to use a digital twin in the right way to define what does good look like. And it's not necessarily all singing, all dancing, everything throughout design, construction, right the way through operations. You've got to take it in, I keep saying this, I am a broken record, it appears, but it's about sprints. It's about putting something down and saying, in this period, we want to really bottom out this problem. And I think that using digital twins, you can have better understanding of embodied carbon in the design process. If you have that instantaneous ability to change one material for another and then see that it reduces embodied carbon, see the effect on the cost, see the effect on the program, that's massive. But again, it's about interdependencies of tools and information more than having something new and shiny.
Just to come back to your point, I guess I fully agree, since somehow it feels in some areas like we crossed the border from revolution to evolution in a way, and there are certain areas which might have a delay according to this point where now it goes downhill. But I guess when it comes to connectivity of tools and more accessibility, of the information itself, it speeds up the process. Yeah, and then I guess we will get there. Fingers crossed. Some are already there, and they will take the others on the journey with them.
Yeah, I think just to sort of finally reiterate that point, somebody said something to me when I first started out in this industry, that it's not about focusing on the practices, the companies, the individuals that are at the forefront. And it's also not about focusing on the ones that are miles behind. It's essentially about trying to reduce the gap between the very front and the very behind. If we can all start working in a more efficient way and close that gap, then everybody will be delivering projects in a better way, and that will only benefit not only the industry but also the clients involved, the money invested, and the end result of the people using these buildings. So great, that's pretty much our time up. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And yeah, there's a whole session this afternoon, so we'll see you back here after the break.